Technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
And this is Focus on Liberia Marketplace. This is Alex Coffey. The rest of the crew, Gabriel, Larry, Depu, will be, William might be joining us later on. This is Focus on Liberia, where we educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. And this is Focus on Liberia Marketplace, where we discuss business, economics, and finance, all things Liberia. Welcome to the show, to all our many listeners, our followers, and those who will be participating in the show today. Again, we have a distinguished guest to walk us through the topic that we'll be discussing today. We'll be discussing CBDC for short, is central bank digital currency. So last Saturday we discussed blockchain, and today we'll be discussing central bank digital currency. And we have Mr. YeahmuKyne, who will be walking us through. Again, this is Alex Coffey. Today we will have some different format. We allow Yemu to walk us through for a few minutes of, he has a slide he will be walking us through, and then we will engage interactively. We'll be bringing your comments, and hopefully we might be introducing phone call in this show or maybe in subsequent show. Welcome, Yemu, and welcome to all our listeners and our viewers out there and those who will be participating. Welcome.
Thank you, Alex. Glad to be here. Very excited to talk about the topic of CBDC, central banking digital currency. I look forward to a very robust discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. So again, to our many viewers, please share the show. Press the share button. Share the show on our behalf because it's with you that the show goes out and everybody listening. And those who will be listening later on, we appreciate you all. Mr. YeahmuKyne, or Mr. Kyne, can you tell us a little bit about yourself in maybe 60 seconds, 1 minute?
No problem, Alex. Originally from Sino County, Greenville, Sino County. I've been here in the United States ever since I was 7 years old. My educational background stems in business, finance and administration and marketing. My professional background stems in IT, healthcare, and finance as well. Now, I'm a father of three. I'd like to say hello to my lovely kids, Sarah, Samantha, and Soren, and also say hello to my wife, Aminata.
Great. A family man who is trying to digitize Liberia.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, that's it. So what do you have for us today?
Alex, I have a few things. I have about 6 things that are primarily, kind of distinguishable in terms of CBDC. So we're going to go into kind of defining what CBDC is, kind of looking at how it came about, and really trying to make sure we define the key differences between CBDC and cryptocurrency. As in relation to FTX, there is a lot of muddying the waters. There's a lot of confusion between the two, and they're completely separate.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because quite recently, in fact, cryptocurrency, digital currency, Bitcoin, and all that had been in the news. And me, as a financial crime investigator, that is high button items, like risky item that we pay attention to. And then with the recent news about the development with FTX and its founder, which they now call Sam Beckman-Fried. And some news article comes out and say he's disgraced founder, and with so as a result of that, there's heightened alerts for cryptocurrency, and there's negative news out there. So the person who comes to talk about this stuff, digital currency or blockchain, has to be able to um, explain the differences and allay people's fear when it comes to this. So with that said, can you walk us through what you have to do? Can you spend the next 10 minutes or so and walk us through and teach us, basically?
Yes. Let's go through. We're not going to go through the entire thing because we don't want this to be a lecture. We do want it to be interactive. So we're going to define what CBDC is. And then from there, we're going to take a look at how we can best integrate that into our system in terms of processing and governance. So let's go ahead and go ahead to slide number 3. So basically, we're going to talk about what is CBDC, central banking digital currency. We all know that we spend money. We all know that there's different forms of money right now. There's your physical cash, your coin, your credit card. There's even cryptocurrency. So I want you guys to keep that in mind and keep those pool of assets in one basket, because they all essentially are different when it comes to CBDC and crypto. So that essentially, in terms of what CBDC is, it is regular money, but is electronic form of money that is never printed, but created with a digital code, and essentially ties into the value of the fiat currency of whatever country. So let's go on to the next slide, Alex. So a lot of people want to know, well, how did CBDC, central banking digital currency, come about? Well, there's a lot of trends that kind of led to this direction. One being the use of physical cash has really diminished. You know as well as I know, the whole COVID pandemic accelerated what we already knew to be a growth model within online shopping. So with COVID hitting, the online shopping already a thing, then having the influx of COVID, it really spurred the growth of the growth of the lack of use of physical cash. Of course, there's the adoption of digital and electronic payments worldwide. That is something that has already been continuing. So as you can imagine, like I told you, you want to keep your credit card payments, your cryptocurrency, your physical cash. That's all in one bucket. So physical cash was going down. The adoption of digital payments worldwide were going up. Crypto, in terms of when we look at cryptocurrency, and people associate cryptocurrency with the number one currency of Bitcoin. So essentially, as Bitcoin grew, it also gave a level of volatility in the market, because not only are you saying that there's a private pool of money that is decentralized, but now that private pool of money is susceptible to things that happen, like the FTX. So CBDC is an alternative because you will have full-time staffing behind this dedicated currency to be able to actually guard and proactively prevent situations like that. So in terms of how it came about, less cash being used, more digital payments being used, especially accelerated through COVID, and then the growth of cryptocurrencies needing to be regulated. All of this gave the birth to central banking digital currency, because essentially they would be the regulating arm for cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin. So I do want the audience to know that that is a very different thing, that we want to differentiate the two and make sure that we don't associate cryptocurrency, aka Bitcoin, with CBDC. Let's continue, Alex. So we want to look at how this plays out in terms of a regular economy, right? We're not looking to get rid of the commercial bank. The commercial bank and even the financial markets will be a great, what we call spur of innovation in terms of creating the multitudes of utilization of the CBDC. The original creation is just something that is going to be dropped in the market, just like any other physical cash, right? So let's start at the top. When we look at the central bank model in terms of when the money enters into the system, there are two different types of CBDC. The wholesale model that we look at coming down initially, that goes down to the private CBDC. That is something where your central bank of your country, perhaps the World Bank, perhaps the IMF, perhaps the BIS would be on a closed circuit or closed blockchain, if you will, to make sure that there is a level of international accountability from a transparency perspective. So what this means is when our friends at the IMF send us money to lower our rice prices, they can see that the government actually spends money on lowering the rice prices by giving the money to the commercial banks or giving the money directly to the rice distributors from the central bank, right? So we look at the private CBDC, that's one thing. There's also transparent CBDC, that's another thing, which we also call a retail CBDC. This is something where I and most people who are interested in blockchain technology think the most maximization can come about in terms of where we can utilize the power of CBDC. This section in terms of the public CBDC, this is where the growth of Liberia lies, because not only are we looking to put all revenue generating ministries, all revenue generating government agencies on this thing, this is something that we're looking to put the commercial banks on. This is something that we're looking to put individual citizens on, so that there is complete financial transparency outside of the money that is coming in the wholesale form from the central bank, from international partners. So this is kind of giving you a breakdown of how this theoretically could work in our current system. We are still going to keep cash. However, as cash comes down in terms of utility and usage, CBDC will be able to come up because of the versatility of it being programmable money. It can be used to stimulate the economy in terms of, hey, if your government wanted to give you, let's say, $500, and to make sure that you spend it within a certain time, they'll put a 1 month, freeze on it to make sure that you spend it, and that will encourage spending. So that does give us a level of control of actually stimulating the economy that never existed previously. Let's go on to the next slide, Alex. So retail CBDC, I really want you guys to understand how credit works in Liberia. In order to get credit in Liberia, you either need physical collateral or you need somewhat of a good job. The physical collateral, they're going to lien against it in case the lien defaults. The good job, they're going to essentially, before they actually pay you, pay themselves first from your check directly. That's how you get money in Liberia. CBDC is going to change that, because now, based on your purchasing patterns, based on your payment history patterns that can be viewed in real-time data up to 2 years back, can create a better environment for not only our commercial banks to make sure that they're not giving out loans that will automatically default or have a high default risk, but it also creates an avenue for good, everyday tax-paying, job-having Liberians who pay their bills on time. It provides them an avenue through good studious behavior, financial studious behavior, to have access to credit. This currently doesn't exist in Liberia. The FICA 10.T is a new form of credit rating that is utilized in America currently, and that it goes away from the FICA 9, which traditionally the FICA 9 only looks at your 1 month window. The FICA 10.T is going to look back, because of the access to the digital data, will look back 2 years. So it's going to create an environment to basically have good spending habits, have good payment habits. So it's going to be a win for the banks, and then it's going to be a win for the everyday citizens who don't have access to the credit markets currently in Liberia.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kyne, for that splendid presentation. At this point, we now want to dig into your mind, sort of, and my objective right here is to kind of make it simple for everybody to understand in the listening land, especially people who are not too digital and things like that. So I'd like to take us back to your initial slide 3, where you define central bank digital currency, CBDC, right? Now, you mentioned some words there. You talk about fiat currency. You talk about tokens, right? Represented on private or permissioned blockchain. Can you kind of explain what is fiat currency?
Fiat currency, well, it goes back to the original point of money. When money was created, it was created in the form of an IOU, right? So
in the form of your IOU?
Yeah, when money was created, it was created in the form of IOU for tangible assets such as gold, correct?
Okay.
So that has been the basis of most monetary systems. However, throughout history, we have had the I guess you would say, the economic opportunity to be able to detach our dollar from an actual tangible asset, and that then creates a fiat currency, which is essentially a faith-based currency. The currency is utilized because of the understanding of the aggregate understanding that everybody trusts this money, that everybody utilizes money in the country and worldwide.
So when you say fiat currency in the terms of Liberia, is going to be the currency that we use, the Liberian dollar, right?
Correct.
The $5, the $10, the $100. That's what you refer to as. So you're saying that is digital currency going to replace our currency or not? Can you?
Well, digital currency, we'll have our own form of Liberian digital dollar, right?
Okay.
And to me, this is a great thing because it's going to give us a chance to fight inflation, and then it's also going to give us a chance to secure the quality of the Liberian dollar.
So the digital currency thing is going to be coins, something. I mean, I'm just playing the devil advocate.
No. This is something that's completely digital. You'll never be able to touch this money.
Okay.
It's always going to be on a platform. There's different ways to access it. Of course, there's a traditional way of your cell phone. There's a traditional way of your laptop. But then there's also this thing called your PIN, where you don't necessarily need a smartphone or a laptop. All you need is your PIN, and you call into your account to be able to actually move funds around. So there are those systems of creation in terms of kind of pushing CBDC out into the masses. Okay. So I think there's definitely room for it. Liberia does have a 26% internet utilization rate. However, they do have mobile money utilization rate. So there's a baseline of activity where people are actually utilizing the internet, and people are familiar with digital transfers to be able to actually say, okay, we know this thing is coming because our international partners at the IMF
It looks like Yemu is having glitch there. Welcome, Depu. How are you?
It looks like this thing turned off. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I'm good, Ellis. How are you doing? Thank you, Ellis. How are you doing?
I'm good. We can't see your chin there. You know, you're trying to hide from. Oh, what are you doing?
Oh, I'm not hiding. I'm not hiding.
Yes, Yemu, go ahead.
Where was I, Alex?
Yeah, we're talking. So the question I want to ask you there is, so you mentioned mobile money. So the digital thing, is it liking to the way mobile money is? Because I can sit here and just touch my phone and send some money to somebody. So and it comes out of my account.
Bingo. The functionality of CBDC to mobile money is very comparable, right? They do the same things, but they're different networks. CBDC is going to be operating on a network that's essentially owned by the central bank. All the other transactions right now are going through private payment systems, which are susceptible to hacking, susceptible to A, B, and C. Not to say that CBDC won't be able to be hacked, because all technology is susceptible. But to me, if you have your currency secure in one technical pool where you can protect it, where it's fully staffed, and essentially you can grow that base, then to me, you can actually promote the value of your dollar, because you have transparency in your public markets when it comes to all your assets, from commercial banking to education to infrastructure to government. All that is public information. So it gives a level of financial transparency within government and public sector to be able to kind of have the tightening of the dollar, if you will, to make sure that money isn't really being siphoned off and pushed in the wrong direction for personal gain and personal use. So I do believe if we move towards this model, then we can fight against corruption initially by technology, and not necessarily leave it to the character of individuals.
So why is it called central bank digital currency? Why are you sending it to the central bank?
Well, currently, Alex, who prints our money? Where do we get our money from?
It's a central bank.
Exactly. So the same people who print our money are telling us, and essentially, when I say by telling us, we'll look at a model later in terms of the 115 different central banks around the world that are actually moving towards this model. So this is something that is coming. So if we're looking to actually stay ahead of the curve, we want to be proactive to be able to say, hey, we're familiar with this technology. We're familiar with what type of CBDC we want to develop. And we want to be proactive. And this is the important part. We want to be proactive to say, we want all our government generating revenue generating entities on a public network in terms of retail CBDC. That's what you're going to use to pay yourselves. That's what you're going to use to facilitate your bills. So now any move you make financially, whether you're at the Ministry of Finance, whether you're at the Ministry of Agriculture, whether you're at the Financial Institute, Financial Intelligence Unit, whether you are the IAA, the LRA, all these government entities are going to be on a public network from a retail CBDC perspective to be able to operate, which is basically going to make sure that they're sending the money to the right place. If they don't, everybody in the country has access to that network.
So what's about the people at Waterside Market or Railway Market or Dwala Market? The Pempen boys and
you know what? That's a very good point. For those kind of things, you have to put up what we'll call display centers, where essentially you have a big screen that will display this type of information to say, okay, Ministry of Finance, this is what they spent today. This is what they paid today, right? Ministry of Agriculture, this is what they paid today. This is what they spent today. So we have had that replicated in the Ministry of Finance before, but of course, I think when when Ellen came and then Robert came after that, they took it down in terms of the monitors. But it has been up there before. We can put one in Waterside Market. We can put one in.
Well, if you put a monitor in Waterside Market, how the people will transact their business? What they have to do with monitor business?
No, when you're saying how do people
CCTV team won't bring now.
when you say how do people will see, right?
No, I'm talking about how they would transact, because you mentioned all the different institutions. Okay, you talk about Ministry of Finance, you talk about this other organization that's government functionary, right? The same way the mobile money is working now, how will the informal sector sort of, right?
It's going to run just like mobile money is running. It's going to be basically the same technical ability that you can go on your cell phone. And you can open your account for mobile money and see how much is there. You can send it to different people by using a cell phone number. It'll be the same thing. But here's the beauty of CBDC if we do it right. The number one issue with accessing credit is essentially underwriting. You have to be able to establish patterns to be able to say, okay, after we look at this, we're going to underwrite this person and give them X amount of money. The problem in Liberia is that we have more than one national ID. The reason we have more than one national ID is because there has not been a financial tie-in to any one of those national IDs to force everybody to use it. Everybody has their own national ID. At the NEC, at the LRA, everybody has their own national ID because they haven't figured out a way to make sure that the national ID process has a financial tie-in like we have a financial tie-in to our social security number here. If we want to get a credit card, you use your social security number here because they have underwriting abilities to go back and look at your data and say, this is your behavior. We can either give you credit or we can't give you credit.
So before I bring Depu in, I am having some interesting comments from our viewers, and Telvi Cole has some concerns here. She says that she hear you talking about the benefits, which are expected, but she's not hearing about the risks.
But Alex, and I know you finished the whole presentation.
Yeah, but I know you have a slide 8 that talk about risk. So maybe we want to go into slide 8. But before we go there, she's also concerned about the security environment. You know, we're talking about internet. We're talking about, access to people's account. And, we got all these different scam and all these cyber criminals and stuff like that. And if, for example, if we introduce this thing into, Liberia, what are some of the security concerns? We also need to, I know you mentioned about regulation and stuff like that, because this is why I asked the question, if this is going to be issued by a central bank. If it's going to be issued by a central bank as part of our currency, then it has to go to the legislature. There have to be law passed, and there have to be regulation, how this is going to be regulated, other institutions that are going to be part of it. So throw some light on regulatory environment, the risk, and the security environment.
Okay. Let's start with regulation. You have to understand that CBDC was created in regards to regulation for cryptocurrency. Okay. That is the birth of CBDC, because essentially the people who print the money, they're not comfortable with the volatility of the money being in private pools. When the money is in private pools, even though that pool is a public access network, that money is essentially a little bit more susceptible. CBDC came to counter that from a security perspective to say that, hey, we can still have open source money, right, which is retail CBDC, but then we also can have the closed network money with your central bank, your IMF, your BIS, USAID, whoever it is you want to have in your international pool, to make sure that when they send that money, they can see in your private network when you send it to the public network. So there's accountability starting at the international level to be able to say, hey, the money we send those guys, we see it on the same network. It's going to agriculture, it's going to infrastructure, right? So that's one thing in terms of the
transparency aspect of it.
Well, not even the transparency, but we're talking about the regulatory aspect, right?
Okay.
So from a regulatory perspective, that's why I was created, to basically check the cryptocurrencies like Bitcoins, right? To make sure that they can't do anything they want to do. So the whole technical nature of CBDC is going to be based on whatever practice is utilized to make sure that they can keep the cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin in check. So if I'm created to keep Bitcoin in check, right, that means from a security perspective, I have to make sure that whatever they're doing, I do it too, plus more, because I'm going to be the regulator, right? From a security perspective, it is like any other technology. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's infallible or it cannot be hacked. But to me, CBDC is a better option than cryptocurrency, because you're going to have a dedicated network of individuals who will be staffed full time to protect this currency, to make sure that the value of this currency is stable. And the health of the economy of the country essentially is tied to this currency. So from a national development perspective, you have to be able to invest in that.
So let's talk about it. Before we bring Depu in, let's talk, you complete the risk and the security issues.
So let's talk about risk, right? No anonymity like cash, right? People are concerned with the privacy. And to me, that's a personal thing, because I know that if I'm not, doing anything wrong, I don't have any real issues with anonymity. For me, paying bills, I don't mind people seeing that I paid my $120 on their light bill this month. There's no problem. So anonymity is a personal decision based on, okay, what are you really going to be doing with the money that you don't want anybody to see? Let's talk about another risk, which is going to be the government exclusive wholesale CBDC. And this is really why we're here. This wholesale CBDC, in terms of the money that's coming down from the international pool, right? If we never talk about how the differences between the wholesale CBDC and retail, if we never educate our audience to know that the wholesale CBDC is coming from our international partners, then we will never set up our government to make sure that essentially they have the international checks and balances to make sure that they're doing the right thing. So instead of saying the Liberian Central Bank network will only have them on it, we can force them by public opinion, by the legislature, to say that it must have the IMF on it, it must have the BIS on it, it must have the World Bank and USAID on it, right? We can force that legislature to happen. But if we never have the discussion, whoever gets into power, whoever gets into exposed to this technology, will create a wholesale CBDC where they have the least account of international transparency, the least account of international accountability. That's why I said we have to stop giving our presidents blank checks. We have to stop it. And we have the technology now to be able to stop these people from misallocating national resources. This is why we're here today.
Okay, we'll take a little break, then we'll come to Depu by recognizing some of our viewers here. Hashin Fambula is watching. We got Nelson Fremont. We got Zize Goya is watching. We got Bastia. Rastia is watching. Of course, we got our dynamic Telvi Cole is watching. We got Emmanuel S. Kendema is watching. We got Elizabeth Pecatier. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that well. She's watching us from Paris, France. Emmanuel Jackson, one of our regular, he loves this program, and so forth. So, Depu, welcome to the show. What says you?
Thank you. This is a very good conversation. Are you getting me?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. How do you pronounce YeahmuKyne?
Yes, sir. Kyne.
Kyne. Okay, Yemo, thank you so much for the conversation I've been following, and it's a great engagement. And I was just basically thinking about, are you coming from the policy perspective, or you are coming from the research perspective in terms of how the proposal would be like for the country? If that's the case, what do you think about, before you talk about financial inclusion, and one of the major things in this whole digital currency thing, that at least a country should use to have effective payment systems. And do Liberia, you think Liberia has effective payment system first before we use the transition or roll out? What do you think?
You said, do we have effective payment systems to be able to support CBDC? Is that your question?
Yes. Even currently, before we go to CBDC, do we really have it effective now?
Yeah, I would add. What you're asking, Emmanuel Kandema is asking us. He said, "Will this not be confused?" So I think I just wanted to.
Will it not be confused with what?
But I just want to intertwine that with what Depu is asking. so you can respond.
Dibu,
Yes.
can you restate your question so that I understand it clearly?
I'm saying in any case, the efficiency level of your banking system and the financial inclusion depends on the transaction level and one of the things that fast track from this whole CDPC thing around the world is the issue of having a good payment system. And I'm asking, do we really have that in place as a country before we roll out to this whole currency? Because I don't see, because before you start walking, you should first crawl.
Dibu, that's a good point. I would say we actually did some research on this, Dibu. So let's go to slide number 4.
Yeah, Controls, can you bring on slide number 4? Yeah, Yemu, you can go ahead.
Okay. So essentially right now, Liberia has 26% internet utilization, right? 54% mobile money transaction. You're asking, should we not basically look to develop our already fragile payment infrastructure, or should we concentrate on the CBDC development? And I would say in relation to that is that you have to kind of look at the technology. CBDC in terms of technology is something that utilizes blockchain technology. And yes, that is, it can be very energy dependent. However, CBDC blockchain, since we're talking about it from a wholesale perspective, is a very closed network of checks and balances. So blockchain is saying, hey, when I send it to the IMF, they say, yeah, that 100,000. When I send it to the World Bank, they say, yeah, the 100,000. When I send it to the BIS, they say, yeah, the 100,000. It all checks out. So then the 100,000 is delivered to the next account. So to me, in relation to kind of efficiency, you have to look at the two pools. The wholesale pool is going to definitely be more efficient when you're talking about cross-border payments, because that's what wholesale CBDC is to say that the big money that's coming in terms of wholesale, we'll give it to our commercial banks and financial institutions to be able to facilitate settlements cross borders quickly. When you sign a check, what happens? Don't you have to traditionally wait maybe 2 days for the money to clear, right? With CBDC, there's no more of waiting for the money to clear. You're all on one network. So the blockchain technology allows the leveraging system to be able to say, hey, when you send the money, it's automatically received. So from an efficiency perspective, I think CBDC will definitely be better for us long term, because it's when compared to like something like I think a Bitcoin in relation to cryptocurrency, which is on that side of the fence in terms of processing payments, which is tied into the cash-based accrued system. Bitcoin can only process 7 transactions per second. CBDC can track transaction up to 700,000 transactions per second. So when we talk about efficiency, it's not necessarily even close in terms of, okay, what would be better for the country? So we're able to process more transactions because the wholesale is on a smaller network. There's less places the money have to go to essentially go to get verified, right? Now, what we have to be smart about is how we set up the retail CBDC in relation to how it works within blockchain technology. Because if the retail CBDC, which is going to be on the open network, if we set it up to a point where it's counterproductive, where we have too many system checks and balances, and from an electronic or energy perspective is giving us, we're going to have to expel more energy to produce. So that's something that we have to basically scale to model, right? We have to make sure that the retail CBDC that we set up in terms of the blockchain and the DAOs that are set up to associate and validate those transactions, we have to make sure that that is in line with what we can do from an energy perspective without burning ourselves up. Make sense?
I haven't. Sorry, I came in late, so I apologize. So I haven't been following the conversation, but so I will leave it to the rest of the guys to leave for now until I can follow up to the rest of the.
So Depu, in short,
Gabriel, just flow
it's
with us.
faster in terms of transaction. The technology that utilizes through blockchain is faster than the traditional payment system that's tied to our cash base, our cryptocurrency, our credit card, our check writing. All that stuff is over there. This is tied to essentially blockchain technology being able to utilize open or closed DAOs.
So this is what Cesar Moro Depu, this is what Cesar Moro is saying. He said, I think Depu is referring to Liberia being on commercial payment gateway. That is allowing a business in Liberia like bujusuperstore.com to receive a Visa or MasterCard payment without routing through Nigeria or Ghana.
Exactly. Those would not be an issue because the payment system would be going directly from the merchant to the central bank, right? The cross-border systems in terms of making sure accounts balance, that's handled by the Wholesale CBDC. And we have about, I guess, 9 different cross-border projects that are being worked on internationally, which are test pilots to say, how is either this country going to pay that country, or how is a pool of countries going to pay each other from a national perspective to make sure that we support the trade that is being done in our economies from a private sector.
Yeah, but isn't that already being done, right? From the traditional system, that is currently being done, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not referring to that being transferred on the CBD, that is now saying that facilitation of trade will be handled through the central bank, because companies now do that, right? Whether it's from a country to country, or from a central bank to a central bank, or from another bank to another bank, that currently happens. To your point, I do agree. The old model that we have, it takes about, if you send money to somebody, depending on the amount, it takes, maybe 2-3 days to get that clear, right? So the blockchain will make that instantaneously, which is what you're referring to. But I don't see how, the central bank coming to facilitate that will make any broader sense than what we currently have.
Well,
and maybe I'll be wrong, so maybe you might want to elaborate.
Yeah, we can talk. Yes. This is a very good point, Gabriel. When let's say let's relate it back to what we're going through right now in the country with the rice issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, there was some money passed down from the international community that were supposed to get to the rice distributors in the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that when you send money the traditional way, there is there's not real-time accountability of where that money is going.
Correct.
You can put it, when you send it on the traditional systems, you can hide it, you can shell it, you can do whatever you want to do with it.
Yep.
Because
you're right.
it's different payment systems that are privatized.
Mm-hmm.
These are private businesses. So CBDC is on one network, right? So now when you get that money down from the IMF, the 20 million, when the IMF, which is a part of your wholesale DAO, which meaning that they're going to be on one network with the IMF, the BIS.
Everybody have access.
The USAID, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
what is the BIS?
Bank of International Settlements.
Yes.
Okay.
Right? So they're a key partner when we talk about financial players in the world. They essentially kind of dictate a lot of what happens in the financial markets. Gabriel, you can second that?
Yep.
Okay. So we need people like that on our wholesale government currency to validate that whoever is in power, when they send the money, there's now real-time accountability of them seeing the money go from wholesale to retail network, where it's on the open network for everybody in the country to see that it came from central bank, the 20 million, now it's coming to the commercial bank, or it's going directly to the rice distributor's account.
I agree.
So that's the whole beauty of this thing, is that, yes, we don't trust the leadership in the country because they keep telling us that we should trust their character when they're not putting any technical pieces in place to be able to have any type of international accountability. You can't say trust me because I have a nice suit. Yeah, bro, and my suit look nice too. You know,
and that is what Elizabeth.
Listen,
everybody on here. You have a better suit than
let me come in here.
Money right now.
Yeah, man.
Just a minute.
Man.
That is what.
Yes, sir.
Just a minute, Debu. That is what Elizabeth Paquetier is talking about. I hope I got the name correct. The banking system is controlled by friendship. The central bank isn't functional fully to help commercial bank money transferring with security because of incompetence. So,
if he, I will let him go on that, and I have a second thought on that.
Okay.
So let me come in again. I know Yemi. Yemi, thank you for the. Yemi, thank you. I think these are good conversation, good options. But the problem that, but for international settlement and the issue of wholesale currency transaction, which of course is a very good aspect of it in terms of international settlement and other engagement. But my concern right now is you're talking about developing countries, finding way leapfrogging into the international financial inclusion to ensure efficiency level. What would be like, for example, I know Nigeria days from the history of this thing, Nigeria is one of the countries that started it. But you look at Nigerian economy and you're looking at Liberian economy, and the pool there will be clearly that settlement or engagement with Nigeria in terms of wholesale will be more faster, engaging, and more productive than that Liberia. What do you think of this? How does this really impact a country that does not even have an opportunity of having a retail system model set in place and just leapfrogging into the wholesale and say, okay, let's follow the team and be a part of it? What do you think?
I think because of our population, because of our minimal population, when you look at us in relation to Nigeria, we're very minimal in terms of population. We're very minimal in terms of the economic production per GDP a year. So if you have a country that is almost they output more than, let's say, 3 trillion a year more than Liberia, right? We're just giving numbers in example. This country that essentially has a higher GDP, higher economic activity, right? So yes, they do have a more robust private payment system network to be able to suit that economy. But that's not the issue here. The issue is that, yes, they have that private system, but even they, in a bigger economy, are looking to go to CBDC because of the digitalization of all currencies worldwide. It's not an isolated incident, or it's not a choice per se that we have to go in this direction. It's only a matter of time. So we must take a proactive approach to be able to say that from a partnership perspective with the international community, that we're familiar with the technology, that we're familiar with how we want to set up our private and public networks of money moving in the country. We can't just be standby players in this thing because, our economy isn't as robust as Nigeria. That's even better for somebody like us, because now it's not going to be as much pressure when we actually do the research and development, when we actually do the pilot, right? We can sit back in Liberia and actually do this comfortably because there is no pressure to actually roll it out from a public perspective. But we know that from an operating and a national interest perspective, there's pressure, because we don't want another 6 years with another blank check going to another administration.
Thank you. And I wanted to, I don't know if you want to answer the question that Alex asked from the audience. I think Depu may have come in with his own question too. So I don't know if you want to take a stab at that. Alex, do you still remember the question?
Yeah, that was a comment from Elizabeth. Elizabeth, which it talks about uh, friendship.
Friendship.
Central bank is not Yeah, banking. Yeah, okay, that's the question there.
It
The
said
banking system is controlled
banking
by
system
friendship.
is controlled, right?
The central bank isn't functional fully to help commercial bank money transfer with security because of incompetence. I don't know, but
Yeah. Yemo, you want to take a stab at that?
take a stab at that.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
I have
I
a
have a
comment.
difference of
I
opinion.
know she brings up a good point, because what we're talking about here is that the capacity of the central bank. The central bank is not a commercial bank. So she's saying that, okay, if we come out with the CBDC, who's going to support, from a customer service perspective, who's going to support this endeavor? Who's going to support this currency?
Right.
And the answer to that is simply the commercial banks.
Mm-hmm.
The commercial banks are going to be the ones that are going to be the pillars in the community that will essentially act as points of registration for account creation through biometric, right? So my dream for CBDC is not it to be by itself, is it to be coupled with the holy trifecta, the triangle: CBDC, national ID, and biometric.
Okay.
Right? Give me those 3 things, we can turn Liberia around. CBDC,
So I think
biometric, right? And a national ID number. Because now the national ID number that everybody refuses to essentially come to Jesus on, to use one, is going to be forced essentially now, because it's going to have a point of financial utility. It's going to have a point of actually having some relevancy in the economy, not just to say it's used by an organization. So then everybody can move towards that model of using that national ID that was created with the CBDC and the biometric endeavors.
Yeah. So I think to her point as well, and this is something I wanted to add to it before the guys go on. She talks about the capacity within the central bank, right? Now, within our case, I think Depu may have alluded to some of that, right? With our case in Liberia, the fundamentals are not there within the central bank, and I think you alluded to some of that. That is going to be facilitated with the commercial banks. That communication with the central bank and the commercial banks is lacking. When I mean is lacking, this is why you see we don't have control over our own interest rate. That as of recent, that we're even able to put interest rate board in place to be able to do that. This is why you see Samuel Twe was able to go on an orthodox way of infusing money into the economy when he should have used the central banks. So to her point, those fundamentals are not there. Now, to your point, to bring in a blockchain, which is like, Liberia is not even in the first industrial revolution, let alone everybody's going into the fourth industrial revolution. So I think Depo alluded to that. You're trying to leapfrog us into that. But in order to leapfrog us into that, you have to make sure you create the fundamental that will be able to sustain that leapfrogging, right? Let me say this before I land. So if you know that most people in Liberia, none of us even has house phone. We never had house phones, right? But everybody right now has a cell phone, right? That's a leapfrogging incident that just happened. Another case that we usually make, not a lot of, if you know the banking system, not a lot of people are in the banking system, contrary to every effort that's being done, right? We're talking about digital currency. We're talking about mobile money. Still, if you can't get the people that don't trust the bank to bank, or even go to digital use this mobile money, how is it that leapfrogging into the blockchain would the central bank or the commercial bank be able to have that fundamental to be able to support that? I think that was the essence of her point. I think to her point, she said banking is friendship, and I just wanted to add to that. The tech, I agree with you. The technology is there. I love the blockchain. I think we had a guest last week who talked about that. But the fundamentals, from a fundamental standpoint, I mean, And forgive me, I was late, so maybe you may have covered that too. But I think that was essence of one of her points in there too. Right.
So, can I come here or
Yeah, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
moderator? One of the things as I'm looking at even the IMF own survey in terms of this whole blockchain, it still has a situation of more countries having a challenge of retail versus the wholesale side of it. In fact, few countries that leapfrog went into the wholesale, but the challenges have been the issue of retail. So now you're looking at an economy. In fact, one of the things you looking at, in fact, the Findex report 2022 showed put Liberia first in terms of financial inclusion, using the issue of mobile money usage and all of things. But one critical issue that stayed there is the distant transaction, distant to trade. Now, you want to be talking about, okay, our multilateral partners, the BIS, the IMF, the rest of the group, transaction with them. But how do you take into consideration the growth of the economy depends on the efficiency level domestically? So if you don't have, you have serious
Let me take that
inclusion
before you go.
challenges.
Let me take that before you go. Let's go back to slide number 10 that shows the economic model for CBDC. Because I think you guys, from what I'm understanding, it's not a hard switch to CBDC.
This one?
It's not a hard switch, right?
Is that this one?
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
So when we talk about, okay, how is a developing country going to be able to integrate itself utilizing CBDC? CBDC is better for a developing country than it is for a developed country. Right? To me, because when you look at this thing from a development perspective, you're trying to say that, okay, how best can we utilize this retail money? Well, cash is already in the system. CBDC is not coming and by overnight means to say, okay, now you guys can't use cash. Realistically, it's going to be a small percentage of the cash pool that incrementally grows with the adoption of the retail capabilities. So it's not anything where we're going to take away credit card payments. We're going to take away cash payments. We're going to take away, you can't write checks. No, it's something to say we have these other forms of money, but we do recognize from a technological perspective, we do need to create our own digital currency to be able to keep pace with the rest of the international community. So yes, from a retail perspective, there is going to be cash in the system. So we're not looking to, okay, scale it tomorrow and make sure that you use it. It's just another option. It's just another tool, right? But I'm pushing this tool because from a top-down perspective, there's transparency that is connected with the international financial partners that currently doesn't exist today. So we don't have to go from cash and mobile money, and now we switching, boom, tomorrow CBDC. No, CBDC will just be slipped into the general monetary policy, and then it'll be allowed to grow over time. But you have to have the access point. You have to have the starting point of origination to be able to build on technology. The best technology are the ones that have failed, but now through trial and error, they're more sustainable. They're more secure. So the longer we wait to start developing our CBDC, the more susceptible and the more we're going to be behind from an international perspective, the more we're going to be behind from a development perspective, because and I know when money comes into the country, it doesn't go where it needs to go, right?
I agree with you on that.
So I'm used to being poor. Poor. It's fine if they send money in the country and we set up a system where it actually goes to the people. Right. I'm fine with that. But a lot of people in our country, they're not fine with other people being able to have a quality of life that is dignified. That's what this is about.
Yep.
Now, Gabriel, you're bringing the energy out of Yemu here. So.
But somebody has to do it.
At this point, we have our telephone line. We will be interacting with our guests. We'll be bringing some questions, additional questions. We have been bringing some questions from our guests, but we'll be bringing more questions because it's very interactive here, Gabriel. If you're
Before we
looking
go to that, you want that
yeah.
you want that put
But
to ask
the number is on the. If you want to call, the number is on the board there. You can call that number. Again, we'll be interacting. So Gabriel at a point, but let's Depu finish, then we'll begin to do that.
Then I think what I wanted for him to hit is hitting it is his concern about how to navigate to reach the point of looking at a wholesale engagement for now, which of course gave up credibility in terms of international relations and accountability.
And that's
which
where
I
we
think
have to start. Is that wholesale piece right there?
That's what I was trying to get out of him. But now the thing there is that I was asking internally you guys about what is YeahmuKyne position. Is YeahmuKyne a policy maker or YeahmuKyne is just a Liberian professional?
Well, the man is right there. Just ask him directly.
So he has not answered the question, so that I can go next step in my engagement to make it more interactive.
So just ask the question, assume it, and then ask the question.
So, Depu, I'm not sure if I understand your question. What's your question?
What do you? I asked from the beginning. I said, "Are you speaking from a policy perspective, or are you speaking from the professional point and say this is what I'm doing?" Meaning that are you a central bank official, or are you just a professional financier and say, "Look, this is my proposal to the country"?
Oh, that's a very good question. I'm not with the central bank. I've never worked for the central bank. I'm just another Liberian, just like you. The only difference is that I believe in the international community, right? I've lost faith in Liberian leadership. So I believe in the international community because they're the ones who keep giving us money. But they give us money blindly. Let's change that.
Thank you. That's what I want to get. Then listen to other viewer and listen to some comment. Then I will definitely go into now.
So therefore, yeah, Yepu, based on what Yemu just said, therefore Musu Fangolos Wangolos Stewart is asking, to whom are you pitching this idea?
I'm pitching it to every Liberian woman, man, and child who can understand.
I like that.
Who can understand my cerise, right? That's who I'm pitching it to. Because
you lost leadership you lost faith in the Liberian leadership. You have faith in an international community. So is this pitch going to international community or is it going to Liberian leadership?
Well, it's going to basically empower Liberian leadership to do the right things.
Or the next ones.
Yeah, right. The next ones, right? So I don't believe Liberians are bad people. I just believe we're in a system where we have the autonomy to be able to do what we want to do from a national government perspective. So that level of autonomy from a financial perspective hasn't benefited the people. So we have to look to shift to a new model, but within the form of democracy, but from a financial perspective that can guarantee that there's accountability of the finances. I'm tired of my mother shipping her goods to the port and then having to drag her 60-something-year-old self over there and then pick up the goods physically to drag it to her shop on Police Academy Junction, right? The port should be developed. We should have mail carriers that are.
But I don't think CBDC would do what you're talking about.
CBDC will have a lot more money available that's not available. I vehemently believe that over at least 50 to 60% of the national resources are being misallocated. So if the money was going to the proper places, we will have more warehouses at the port. We will have more roads that are more centric around our agricultural development centers to be able to actually export to the port, export to local communities, export to neighboring countries. Right?
So, YeahmuKyne, Caesar Morris says he wishes that the central bank, the CBL, Central Bank of Liberia, were here to help us understand. Because now from the streets of Monrovia, anyone can send funds outside Liberia, outside of the banking system. maybe through the Hawala system, as we call it, and now we're hearing about all these different Ponzi scheme and things that are going on. So how
What
do
does
you
it mean
address that?
outside of the banking system?
Hawala,
Yep. That's a
It
very good
still
point.
goes through
Let me tell you.
process through the banking system. What
Let me tell
is the
Let me tell you what he's
ways
talking
that
about,
we
Gabriel.
use?
Gabriel, let me tell you what he's talking about. He's talking about how cryptocurrency essentially is not tied into the African financial networks. Nigeria doesn't allow Bitcoin or any form of cryptocurrency. Right? We don't have the ability to, in our country, in Liberia, to go and buy cryptocurrency and associate with a Liberian-based bank account. Right?
Right.
So this guy is just saying that he's found a way from a technical perspective to integrate into that network and go around.
So what are the implications for that? That means we're losing money. I think we lost him.
He's gonna come back.
Okay.
But anyway, Yemu.
Yes, can you hear me?
Some of our viewers say your suit nice, part my suit.
Alex, the way you looking at money today, that my suit nice part your suit.
Alice.
Yeah. Yemu, thank you for this proposal. But when I listened to him first, I thought he was this CB authority who is trying to make a proposal. And considering his suit, I'm coming. I just want to make a little fun because the suit they made. Look at the man.
Just take it with a grain of salt, please.
The man show that my man, the guy's in control. But the reality there is that the technological proposal at this time is something that is good for financial inclusion and innovation across Africa. It's not only Liberia. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was in Nairobi, Kenya. That was a scene debate for I would call post-conflict country like Liberia, Somalia, and Gambia and other people. But the reality there is that financial inclusion is very much crucial. That's what we need. But if the policymakers themselves have not seen it, it's difficult for you to drive that. And one of the things that there is, like what the caller was saying, okay, you see, national currency is something that people try to protect or try to own. In as much as you're talking about transparency, it has to be done through a financial system. There where we need to tackle transparency first to ensure that people have access to financing opportunity and availability of financing for investment across the country. If not, we're just going to be discussing, based on just academic perspective. So, this is a very good proposal. I just feel okay, but how do we push it in? The next concern, which is very much important here, is look, how are the international partners looking at this? In fact, the IMF have done most survey, the BIS have done most survey. They themselves looking at what are some of the engagement opportunities that they have now with countries like Liberia. If you look at the CBL, even as much as money is going, they're providing financing. The USAID, most of them giving money. The government of Liberia or the central bank tons of millions of dollars. It's all because of the same problem we face today. So how do you reduce and narrow, the gaps in terms of financial inclusion? These are things that are good proposals. So thank you very much. We can listen to the
biggest problem with the central bank, the government owing the, central bank a lot of money is just because of, I think, some of the things that Yemu alluded to. It's mismanagement. Not only that, too, the central bank is not capitalized, right? The central bank is not capitalized. Our commercial banks are not capitalized. So to go to your point where you say, how do we bring in financial inclusion to tie into all of that? If we figure out, and this is one of the things that I was talking about when I said fundamentals, those are the fundamentals. In order to bring in a blockchain system, you got to make sure not only is your central bank capitalized, but your commercial banks are capitalized as well. Meaning when central bank capitalized, meaning how do we make money? How is money printed? When I mean money printed, how is it made?
Right? Okay, so let me
Let me land, and I'll finish. So let's say Depu, you have a business. You get into a contract with Alex or Yemu, right? You sign $100 million contract. That $100 million note secured by the guarantee, collateral, and everything else, security agreement, that is money. The bank that you signed that note should be able to take that $1 million security contract that you just signed to the central bank and be able to turn in that contract and get that money right away so they can go fund the next person who will come to them to do that money. The problem is we don't have that. You cannot go to a bank in Liberia right now, whether it's a commercial bank or whatever you want to call it, to be able to take out a $2 million or loan or whatever you want to call it. And they'll be able to turn that right around and give you that money right, let's say within next week, for that money to be in your deposit, your account. That is the biggest fundamental that we have in our country. The moment we figure that out, you bring in the blockchain, everything else will work. And like he said, to be able to capitalize, to make the grow the Liberian economy, we will be able to do that. But that is my only reservation I have about that. Thank you.
But Gabriel, you are saying this. The reason why I'm asking, give me the question is that even the IMF we're talking about, the IMF is trying to struggle with how best to give us to finance our reserve because they realize that we are low on reserve. So these are problems that they are actor, they are partner, and they are the main people that are supposed to hold the gap. They are the doorkeeper, the gatekeeper. But at the same time, they're seeing the reality and not pursuing these things. And that's why I said, how do we pursue this? How do we go about this? Because it's a proposal.
It's a very good question. Let me talk about the how. The how actually has.
So YeahmuKyne, yes. Before you come in with that, Musu Wangolo Stewart is saying Liberia is a cash economy because citizens do not have confidence in the local economy or banks. The confidence has to be present for citizens to consider other options, right? That's one. Then Emmanuel Jackson has a question for you. He says, is CB's DC
whatever it is
process on the SWIFT system with delivery instruction, rate discrepancies, and brokerage fees? How do you address those two things?
Okay, let's start with the first question in relation to
the confidence,
having faith in the local economy and the banking system.
Mm-hmm.
In relation to CBDC. Whatever faith that exists currently in the commercial banking system and the general local economy, that has little to do with the actual currency itself, but rather to do with the services that are being provided in the local economy. Now, when we talk about the banking confidence or the people's confidence in the commercial banking sector, Alex, you can attest to this. Most ministries and government agencies that are generating revenue, where do they put the money, Alex?
Mm-hmm.
They put it in the commercial banks, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's utilization from a government perspective. That is number one that gives you confidence in the commercial banks. So we know that every day.
Wait, and rephrase that question again, because I answered that question. I was not paying attention, actually.
So we're talking about the local bank and why people, may not have confidence in the local commercial bank. And I'm trying to say that the confidence is there in the local commercial bank because there's support by the government, which is then supported by the private sector in terms of utilization. Every ministry and government agency that generates revenue, they put their deposits through a commercial bank, which is then swept through and collected at the central bank. Correct, Alex?
Yes, of course. That's a process that exists. But as
Mhm.
with confidence in the banking system,
Well, hold on now.
that's a different thing.
So I'm just
So
saying
I
that.
answer yes to your question in that context. But when it comes to confidence in the banking system, there's a lower percent of our people who are banked. Yeah.
And I think CBDC can help the confidence in the banking system, because what we're doing is we're digitizing money. Anytime you digitize any process, you take away the ability for the corruption to be leaked into that process, right? A lot of issues in Liberia right now is when people go to the bank, they have to pay money to get their money. In America, when we go to the bank, we get our money for free because it's our
But
money.
you mean money lose for money,
Right? I get it, but it shouldn't be that way. Is my point. And with the introduction of CBDC into the commercial banking systems, that level of digitalization will automatically cut down the need for in-person interactions, which then create the opportunity for corruption. Right? So the whole aspect of having trust in the commercial banking system, it's a thing where people have to experience a positive feeling or positive experience to be able to actually trust these people. The trust hasn't been able to be there because of the in-person interaction and the corruption that is created from those in-person interactions. With CBDC, you have digital accounts. The money moves digitally. I can't go into the bank and the bank teller tell me, "Oh, my man, give me this small team and I'll bring the money outside for you."
No, but Yemu, wait. You gotta have confidence in the banking system as it is now before you leapfrog. I mean, digital currency.
We're not talking about improving the current banking system. We're talking about adding this measure. So I cannot speak to how to improve the current payment systems that are related to the cash-based assets that pretty much rival CBDC.
I see.
My prescription is coming from a CBDC perspective. It's not coming from let's improve the retail marketing.
So you don't want to clean the thing up, but you want to put something up for you.
No, I want to put another piece of tool in there that will give us financial transparency at the national level. However, we integrate it at the retail level will be in accordance to the need on the ground.
Okay.
Any more
Okay.
comments?
Yeah, Gabriel, you can bring in more questions.
So no. There's another one. He said how. He said how. So let's talk about the how. And this is really important because you can't just have these fancy ideas and don't know how to implement them.
Thank you.
Right? This thing is very simple, and it has to do with what we're going through in Liberia right now in terms of leases, in terms of the census. Right? You cannot accurately predict any budget in the country if you don't know the population of the country. So if you can't predict the budget, how can you predict or have good spending habits or have good spending patterns from a national government perspective? Right? So my point is that in terms of how, we start with the census, with every registered Liberian that is in the country. We then take that information and then we couple it with CBDC in terms of registering people at the commercial bank level. We take that information and make sure that we have 100% of implementation in terms of creating accounts for everybody that was registered through the Liberian census. There will be those who are going to be missed because of the inefficiency of the current process or the lack of the current process. I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of gaps, a bunch of people missing, because as you know, our president gave a holiday for a day that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right. So people just wasted a whole day of production and productivity. Our whole economy was stagnated for one whole day because of miscommunication between the president and Legis. And who runs Legis? Twet. Because by de facto, he is the chairman of the board of Legis because of his role as the development ministry, which used to be a separate role from finance ministry, but now they combine the two. So he is the de facto leader of Legis. So of course, these people don't want to run a census to be able to actually compile accurate information of population, because what happens after you collect data and say, oh, we got 7 million people in the country, right? Now you have to go out and provide services for 7 million people when you're spending your money. You have to put this in the budget, right? So CBDC starts with the census to be able to say we're going to combine every living Liberian that is registered through the census. We're going to give them a bank account. We're going to give them a national ID number, but we're only going to be able to do it inside of a commercial bank or through an application that has biometric registry, so that we do not have duplication of profiles in the system. Nobody has the same 2 eyeballs. So it can be done. That's the how. That's the first step.
Yeah.
Right? So once we take that first step, we collect the information from Legis, we collect information from the census, we compile that data, we give it to the commercial banks, then we execute. Just like Legis has to execute and send people out in the field, the commercial banking system can work with Legis to send those same people out into the field to make sure that they're registering people for CBDC accounts through a biometric system, all at the same time, while giving them a national ID system that now has financial tie-in to be able to actually create credit for the everyday Liberian, not based on collateral, not based on jobs, but based on good spending habits, based on good payment habits. We want to create good stewards of money, not this fiasco that's been going on in the country for X amount of years, where people feel like they can just mismanage funds from a national and a personal perspective, because it's a trickle-down thing. If you see the people at the top misabusing money, what are you going to do when you get a list month and you go out, you party, boom, it's gone.
All right.
So I got that.
Okay. Depu,
you want to ask a question, then I'll go to comment, or I can go to the comment.
Okay, please let me go back to Yemi. I know how he had given it, but one thing I see is that this gone October spring conference, the conference at World Bank and IMF, there was this concern raised by the Bank of International Settlement and the rest of it, that the emerging economy, they're doing well and moving faster, but the major concern has been the issue of digital infrastructure. And that is one of the major constraints into this whole CBDC. So you want to make a proposal, but there's a problem of digital infrastructure constraint for Liberia. So if we are addressing it, how?
Let me counter that. Let me counter that, because 54% of the money right now is utilized in terms of transaction by mobile money, right? That's the same exact infrastructure, these smartphones that are using, that the CBDC is using. So if 54% of the people are already utilizing this infrastructure, which CBDC will be a part of, then what more infrastructure do we need to actually start the program at a minuscule level?
And that's the question I'm asking, because the thing about it is that it's a good suggestion, good argument. That's what I'm looking at, because where do we start from? The reality there is that there are so many things that we want it to be in place before we start, but there should be I'll call it a tipping point, and the tipping point would be our desire and decision to say, look, can we go for CBDC and do, first of all, a multilateral engagement, and from there then we can now go down to the retail level, and while we are looking at it.
Let's go to slide number 11.
Digital framework within the country.
Let's go to slide number 11.
And Liberia. And once
before we go to slide 11, I bring a comment here from Agatha Shile, right? So, because her question, she says, so the international to send and follow after the money. Send mostly this, they said, expertise, but doing nothing, so the government take the blame. If this work, it will be balanced for those who come after the money, and we'll see who take what out of the country in which work was done by them. What she's literally saying is that we have, say you say the money coming from international people, we always have them come in, and they take the same money, they say they spend 5 million, 10 million on our country, and they send experts quote unquote expert behind the money, and they pay them or they, so with this kind of thing capture that too, and so we'll see the money that these international people are taking back.
Yep. Let's talk about that, because what this will do for us is it'll expedite the process of recovering stolen government funds. Because now you can have real-time accountability when government misappropriates funds, right? The whole aspect of the international community sending contingencies into the country after they have given us a loan is simply because they don't have view of access to our payment systems of where the money is going. So they have to send physical people in the country to then partner with our payment systems and try, and the key word is try, to figure out where this money went, right? Instead of doing all that, now we have an expedited process of our central bank is on a actual secure network with other international partners who continuously fund our government endeavors. So now when that money is allocated, whether it's allocated and it stays into the private network of the commercial bank in fintech firms, or whether it goes over here to the open network of the retail and government entities in private sector, both of those networks are viewable by our international partners. So that's why I keep saying this is the tool that will allow us to say, no matter who the president is in Liberia, he or she will not have a blank check. 20% of the revenue that we use to feed ourselves, our government officials, 20% of that money is coming from our international partners.
So we have a caller on the line. We'll ask control to bring that caller in so that we can hear that caller out.
Alina Cole, calling from Texas. Our group discussion. I have a couple of questions for the guests. First question is, you talked about their piloting, or they had piloted the initiative. And before I go into that, I just want to say I'm a big fan of digital currency. I think it's the direction of the world. So no doubt, my concerns, if any, have to do with risk and just the security aspect. But so the issue, first thing here, you talk about a policy, or you guys have piloted, or you're in the process of piloting this initiative. This involves the government, obviously, talking about central bank. So who are you piloting with? Is the government involved? I'm sure there's something like this. You need a government buy-in. So are they involved in your pilot? Will they be involved in the pilot? Also, what is the tentative date to, for lack of a better term, launch this innovation in Liberia? Tell us about it. And I close very quickly. You talk about, you give people digital card, digital wallet, and all this cool stuff and all of that. It sounds good to the ear. It sounds like music. However, we're talking about Liberia. You talk about the internet usage, but we need to consider the illicit rate. We need to talk about how the people are with technology. So how do you intend to handle that, especially with this new technology? Even in America, it's a battle to even introduce us to that technology. So that's it. Great questions.
So let's start with the last one, the technology piece. How can we make sure the everyday Liberians, y'all hear the music?
Can we?
Somebody play music.
Somebody
play music. Okay.
All right.
So let's get back to it. In terms of, okay, we're rolling out CBDC, but is the everyday Liberian going to be able to utilize this? And the question is yes, because we already know that the strongest and the deepest voting bloc in Liberia are the youth, right? These people are on Facebook, they're on TikTok, they're on social media, and they are familiar with interacting on applications. My grandmother never knew how to read, but she could add numbers. She woke up every morning in Sano and sell her cornbread, right? And sell her rice bread. She couldn't read, but she could add. Just like the 80% of the people in the country can't read, but they can get on the app and put themselves on Facebook just fine. So if you can put yourself on Facebook, you can essentially be able to send money and receive money on a banking application. So I think from a technical perspective, we don't have to worry about the adaptability of our people. They're there. They're smart. I believe in them from that perspective. They're very sharp.
Okay.
From a date of launch perspective, let's talk about that. When will this thing actually happen? So our government has not said one word about CBDC. It's even hard to find anybody talking about CBDC, even in the Liberian political landscape. I believe I'm the only one, right?
Yeah, right.
So from a date of launch perspective, this thing is usually taking a 2-year from start to finish to be able to launch and be active in a pilot phase, right? Not pilot phase, but a launch phase. So it's a 2-year process, meaning that whenever we start to talk about this more, the sooner that 2-year will start. I'm just the first one initiating the conversation in our Liberian community because I believe in the financial transparency that it can create from an international perspective. The retail side of it, we can develop as we need to, as we go along. So the other piece you want to talk about, you addressed was the government tie-in. Like I just said, I'm the only one in the whole country talking about CBDC. Minister Twe doesn't, I don't even know if he knows what CBDC is. Okay? Our president, I don't know if he knows what CBDC is. Okay? So we have to be able to actually start the conversation and then integrate whoever.
Cummins and Bwaka know about it too?
Cummins knows about it.
You about to ruffle feathers here. Let him finish comment.
No, I mean, Cummins knows about it because I addressed.
Yeah, well, Gonglo know about it too.
If they're watching your show, Boyka and Gonglo would know about it.
Yemo, that's a trap. Please answer your question. You fell right into it.
No, it was a regular question.
Okay, we on our 1 hour. We on our time limit now. I gotta be asking for control for additional time, but we gotta wind down quickly. But I need to understand with respect to slide 11 that you were asking for.
Yes, let's go back to
which countries have implemented this thing? Because I'm coming from the background of a question that Telvico posted. The great United States of America is still trying to pilot this stuff and this whole digital currency kind of stuff.
Create a policy around it.
Right.
Let me the way now.
Yeah, they've done. Let me land with a question. So that's why I'm trying to ask you, who has implemented it? I know it has failed in 2 countries, but who has implemented this thing? What stages are they on? And and how Liberia can buy into this kind of stuff?
So let's focus on the important places to us. The important places to us is the continent of Africa, and we as Liberians, America is important to us because of our longstanding alliance. Okay. So let's start there. The United States, 3 days ago now, started their pilot program. Is 12 weeks. So basically 12 weeks from now, they will come out and say, hey, we're able to present you guys with CBDC in America, right? It may just be from a wholesale and retail perspective. It may not roll down to from a wholesale perspective and not retail, where we're using it at the commercial bank level initially, but at least when they start 12 weeks from now, wholesale CBDC will be active. Then the markets will kind of dictate how. When
you say wholesale, that means it's at the bank level.
No, at the central bank level, right?
And then central banks come to the
commercial banks, yes.
Okay.
Right?
Go ahead.
So that's one thing. That's what we care about in America. So we already know our big brother has started this program, right? The second thing is we want to look at African nations because essentially we want to be one of the leaders in digital currency when it comes down to the end of the day. So of the world countries, we have about 112 countries that are developing CBDC. Let's go to the next slide because we want to look at specific African countries and what phases they're at. And do keep in mind, this is open information at the bottom right hand. I did put the website for the Atlantic Council.org where you can find it. So this is Nigeria's demographic in terms of CBDC. They have launched. It's called the e-Naira. And it's something where I think it's been in existence for a few months now, maybe even a year. There have been some hurdles in their e-Naira in unveiling it to the public because of the large population and the robust economy. And to Dupo's point is, I'm telling you,
we're gone more than a year.
Yeah, we're a perfect model for CBDC because we won't have the volatility issues or capacity issues really that Nigeria has because our economy is not comparable to theirs, but they're actually utilizing this tool and growing it at a scalable rate that can be utilized at the wholesale and retail level. So that's just Nigeria. Let's go on to the next slide. All right, so this is South Africa. South Africa is right behind in terms of process. They're in the pilot phase. Once they go into the pilot phase, then they will launch after that. So they're right behind Nigeria. From the Iran perspective, I read that they are excited about it because they do want to diversify the money pool, and they do understand the urgency really from a wholesale cross-border trading perspective. Let's go on to the next slide. All right, so there's Ghana, the ECD. They are two, just like South Africa, in pilot. And like most of these 100 and something countries, they're simply doing the work to be able to put their country in position to transact with the rest of the world. When the world was first created, we all had gold. Then we went to paper money. Now we're going to digital currency. We as Liberians cannot sit here and say, oh, we see this map of 100 and something countries moving to digital currency, but oh, our economy too small, we can't do it. No, that's backwards thinking, and we will not have it in this new generation.
Can I just say something real quick before you guys go on to that? I just want to add to what YeahmuKyne was saying. So in terms of what other countries, why is it that we're leapfrogging and there's no support in the government? So if you look at the USA, every industry that I've started, they have played catch up. What do I mean by that? So if you look at the hedge fund, first, it started with the venture capital. When the venture capital first started, the government had no way to creating policy to regulate it. They played catch up, and they eventually found a way to regulate it. The same thing with the hedge funds, right? They had no idea how to regulate it. The same thing is happening with technologies, like how big these tech firms are getting right now, like the Apple and Google, how to regulate them to control, like to control monopoly, right? They're struggling with it. So what I'm saying, I just wanted to add to what he's saying is that the CBDC, yes, is developing. The government is playing catch up right now to find policy to really understand it. Like, what is this thing? How can we regulate it without, taking the power away from people who already put money into it, because they know there's too much money already into the blockchain and stuff like that. So they're going to play catch up. So eventually they're going to catch on. So to YeahmuKyne's point, we need to get ahead, and when the policy catch up, we will already be ahead.
Bingo. But here's the
gentlemen,
Ken,
Mr. Ken,
yes.
we got to be wrapping up because control has left us already. We don't have a lot of time. Maybe at another time we'll continue on the program, but at this point we should begin to wind down. So you go ahead. Okay.
Well, Alex, Gabriel, Dupo, I think Percy, you joined us as well. I just want to thank you guys for having this.
No, we're not saying your closing comment. We say go ahead with what you wanted to say.
Well, you had a point.
Okay.
Yeah.
In relation to the whole thing Gabriel was talking about from an international perspective and not being left behind, I just want everybody to understand that there's nothing wrong with starting this process, right? I'm not saying that we need to force people to use CBDC, but we need to actually be able to competitively compete internationally. We can't be always behind the curve like some things our big brothers have been behind on. And even in relation to CBDC, America is behind in terms of the development because China, their CBDC has been active for over a year, right? So we're just now putting a kick in our financial sector's butt to be able to go and compete with them. And realistically, this has to do with the strength of the dollar internationally, right? Saudi Arabia right now is doing business with China with the likes that we've never seen before. And the reason why they're able to do business with China, not only from a political alignment perspective, they're able to do more business with China because China has a digital currency that they're using to buy oil, right? Okay. So this is a serious thing that essentially, on an international perspective, we have to be able to put ourselves in position to take advantage of it. And I think one key way to do it is that from a process perspective, in terms of credit underwriting, we can make sure that national credit underwriting firm is a private entity owned by every Liberian that is essentially conducted by the census. Right?
Yeah, Caesar Murray agrees with you that yes, is currently working in our West African neighboring country, Nigeria. He also says that it's a great idea. To me, CBDC brings more possibilities and go on. So he wholeheartedly agrees with you. So at this point, we'll begin to wind down this program. Welcome, Mr. Percy Harris. What is your comment to all this discussion? Very briefly, 1 minute, please.
You're muted.
You're on mute. You're mute. You're mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, 1 minute, please.
Can you?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. I like the discussion. What you guys do bad to me all the time. I have to be running around for this link to this show. I've been here for I don't know how long.
My man,
But I like the discussion.
no,
Where it's going.
We sent you the link. It was in your box.
My man, we here to do no, we here to do what do you call cross-setting in a show.
Let me just. I came late, so I don't want to hold you guys. I like the conversation where it is, where it's going. I like the proposal. The way I understand it is like this would enhance what we already have in terms of monitor the kind of money that we use in Liberia. Maybe looking at the ELR, the $E kind of sort of. I like the proposal. My only thing is, I think Depo hit on that, right? These things have to complement all the things that are already there. And right now, as you look at Liberia, just look at the whole landscape, there are a lot of challenges there. And so I think we still need to do a lot of feasibility study. Like you said, we can be ahead. There's nothing wrong. We can be ahead with having studied these things so that maybe instead of playing catch up, given where we are. So I like that. I just hope that we can have more in-depth conversation about these things, right? And how we're going to implement it, how it's going to affect the lives of our people and the country at large. But I came late, so I don't want to preach to the choir. But yeah, that's. I hope we can have more conversation about that.
Depu, how you capture the whole discussion so far?
Thank you very much. I think this is good engagement. And one of the things, as I mentioned to YeahmuKyne, is that, the annual meeting that just took place last month, this is the same debate that been ongoing. But one constraint which we need to also make as a policy recommendation is that countries that have actually gone in, that have started this, one of the things they have worked on first is to see their digital infrastructure and some of the challenges they face in the country, and now make that digital policy platform of financial inclusion innovation strategy to be a priority. Like that, it help to see how best to leapfrog most of the countries, especially post-conflict countries, are moving towards this. And Liberia is still on a path. Liberia is moving on a path. If you look at a realistic point of view in terms of financial inclusion, with the introduction of mobile money and rest of the thing, there are much movement faster over there in terms of transaction. The only thing that need to do now is to see the national policy architect should be able to capture these things and say, this is where we are moving. Before the citizens, coming up to have challenges, the government should make it a priority. So it's a good conversation that we can elevate it. It's good for the country. The IMF, the World Bank, they themselves they know that it's cutting it, and it should be part of the next, IMF program with Liberia or the World Bank strategy for Liberia. These are things that will help us to see how best it can be fully implemented. Well, thank you. Yep. It is good.
Gabriel, what says you?
Yeah, YeahmuKyne, thank you for a great discussion. Every time we bring a guest on the show, usually I kind of worried about them that they might fumble, but but you held it together, and thank you. I think this is a great discussion. I hope you can come back to expand more on it and
most definitely
talk to. I would recommend you continue to maybe reach out like Alex recommended. You talk to the other political candidates that are willing to hear your proposal on there. So at least you plant a seed in the back of their head. So in case when any of them win, they can, say, hey, this guy talked to me about this idea to transform the economy, to eliminate corruption in a certain way. But I think there's a lot of challenges, as I said, from a fundamental level. As you continue to develop, I don't know if this is a white paper you're doing or this is a proposal, you might want to think about the fundamental piece of it, how to deal with the fundamental piece of it. So when you actually do begin to implement this, it's already light years ahead. Like you've already taken care of the fundamental piece of it. But I think this is a great discussion, and thank you for coming to share with us. Please be back and let's talk more about it.
Yeah, that's true, Gabriel. You're right. You created a lot of excitement around here. There's too many viewers. There's too many comments that we couldn't even capture half of them. So we got to, on behalf of FOL, I had to, a marketplace, I got to apologize to a lot of our people. We're trying to manage our time here, but there are lots of comments that we didn't capture. So we would like to thank our viewers, our people who commented, our callers. This is an exciting topic, and I believe we should bring you back to expand on this. So can you capture this thing in 1 or 2 minutes for us? So take us home, please.
Yes. So to summarize everything, we want to make sure that we leave here today that we know the difference between CBDC and cryptocurrency, that they're two different things. Because from an African perspective, there are no cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin that are integrated with our financial networks. So let's just leave cryptocurrency on that side for the people who in the diaspora and have access to those networks. We're talking about Liberians. The other thing I want us to leave here today knowing is that we're finally at a point as a country, as a nation, where no matter who the president is, we can now hold them accountable financially. No more blank checks. That's why I want you guys to leave here to remember. No more blank checks for Liberian presidents. Not one.
Including like Shelley said, I'm not cutting you off, but like what I gotta say that even our international people, what she meant was that when they bring this 10 million, 25 million project, they send their expert behind it to take some of the money. So she was trying to say that whether this central bank digital currency can capture their own transaction as well. Yep. So you can proceed. I'm sorry for doing that, but I needed to drive that point.
That's a good point, Alex, because I think they may not have a need to send people anymore. You think about it. You own one network. I send you the money. You send the money to somebody else. I see who you send the money to. There's no need for me to send my people to figure out where the money went.
No, Yemu, you're not getting that point. The point is, say we have a big agricultural project and the international organization is supporting that. Then they send experts to come and manage the project or to implement the project, and they, of course, they get a big pay. They have all kinds of big pay. That's what she was talking about.
And you see
that digital currency.
We can leave this other conversation.
Okay.
But I think we need to have the other conversation next time.
Okay, conclude. Sorry.
Let me finish. So I just want, like I said, everybody to leave here with the idea that we don't want to give out any more blank checks to any more government, any more presidents, right?
Okay.
CBDC is a tool that can help us do that. So I just want you guys to basically have the mindset that once you repeat CBDC to another Liberian, is going to basically create that effective change. One day the light bulb will click in all of our Liberian minds and say, oh, that's true you're talking, right? It's going to click. But unless we start to have the conversation continuously, right? More in depth in terms of processes. How would we implement this? Working with places like Legis and the census and combining with the national ID to be able to come up with a robust system that actually helps the citizenry, right? So that's what we want to leave here today, is to know that this is a tool that we can help to basically collect data better. Any society that fails, they fail because they were bad collectors of their own information.
Perfect. Alex.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Exciting conversation. Once again, we'd like to thank the FOL on behalf of our CEO, Dennis Jha, and our COO, Anthony Sie, and Gabriel Depu, and Larry, as well as Willem. We say thanks to all our staff and all our viewers. And Yemu, thank you very much for coming on. We hope to see you again.
Will do.
Gabriel, you can take us home.
Please do come back. We would like to see you to expand on this idea, because I think
yes. I would love to. We only got to maybe like 5 or 6 out of the 21 different slides I prepared today. So there's, as you can tell, there's a lot more information, but from our community perspective. And Alex, this was a great job by you steering the conversation in that regard. Was that we wanted to keep it simple to educate people what CBDC is, to know that it's not cryptocurrency, to know that their governments can be held accountable for the financial transactions they make. Finally.
Thank you. Yeah. So as we always say, we look forward to, just give us the word, and we will schedule a time to have you back in whenever you're ready.
We'll do. Thank you so much, guys.
As we always say, regardless of what side of the political aisle you're on, whether you think the current administration is doing a good job or the opposition is the next group of people to take us where we need to be from an economic standpoint, there's one thing that always, that is the common denominator, and that is the fact that we are all Liberians, and every conversation we have on this network is to bring that conversation to an inch better than we left it, and that's what we always do here, to promote everything Liberia. And thank you for sharing your ideas with us. We look forward to having you back. And to the audience, same time, Saturday, next time, we will see you. Thank you for joining us. Ciao.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
We are Liberia. Liberia is our home. Liberia people. Our father, who art in heaven.